Hello everyone and welcome to Scorcher Toys at Anymoon.com's review of Bandai's High Metal R VF-2SS with Super Armed Pack toys. There have been two releases so far. Sylvie kicked things off in November 2017 and next followed in November 2018, both with an MSRP of 14,000 yen. Macross 2 falls into the same licensing quagmire as every other Macross product, so you'll have to shop for these toys at specialty importers. To shop for anything else, I continue to recommend Big Bad Toy Store. Click the link in my comments below to go do some shopping and help this channel out in the process. Compared to other High Metal R releases, these toys come in huge boxes. Both toys feature lovely artwork, this time by Masami Obari, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any of that, one of the original artists that worked on Macross 2. When you open up the massive box, you'll find a plastic tray that contains the following: a gun with extension, flip-out handguard, and flip-out grip, smaller wings, it's one piece, Gearwalk specific front toes, 3 pairs of fixed posed hands, a gun gripping hand, open, and fists, 3 landing gear, 2 replacement head lasers, the Super Armed Pack, which consists of a backpack, 2 leg armors, 2 open missile bay doors, and 2 arm armors. There are 6 Sap open firing ports, 4 for the ends of the wings, 2 for the top rack. There are 4 Squire drones. There's a mock gun protruding from a forearm storage piece that stimulates popping the gun out there. A Batroid mode support piece, which is also a display stand adapter, and then Gearwalk and fighter mode display stand adapters as well. If you get the next version, there is a small tray taped below that tray that includes an additional leg armor and a larger gun. The additional leg armor allows the toy to stow that new gun. Finally, behind the plastic tray on a colored sheet of cardboard, you will find instructions, and I have full scans of the instructions up on Anymoon.com. For those of you already familiar with the Sylvie version of the toy, I'm going to begin by just discussing the differences between the two. Now, both toys do come with this gun here, which has a slide-out mechanism, a hand baffle, and a grip that swings down. There are fixed posed hands that you're definitely going to need to use because the integrated hands that come on the toy cannot hold the gun. So you're going to go ahead and install the grip into the fixed posed hand, wiggle it down. You just roll the hand right off the little metal ball joint within, plug that hand in, and there you go. So now both toys do come with everything you see here. All of the Sap parts, everything is the same. Blue stripe, red stripe. The next version of the toy also includes these 2 parts, which is a leg armor that stows the gun and a heavy gun. The heavy gun does have a slide out mechanism. It does have a hand guard and flip down grip, as well as this little thing in the front that swings down. And the same thing, you would just put it in a fixed posed hand and put it on the toy. So that's the bonus accessories you get with next. From a mold perspective, the other difference here is that on the next version, they've made the peg on the neck plate a lot longer than it is on the Sylvie version of the toy. Now, I haven't had a problem with it on the Sylvie version of the toy, but it's clear it doesn't really go down into the slot that it's supposed to and function like it should. On the next version, it does go down into that slot, but it doesn't really do anything. It's not a very tight connection, so it's not stopping that plate from moving up anyway. So don't let that be a decision-making criteria for you. Obviously, the pilots are different as well, so let's check those out. I mentioned that the next figure comes with a unique pilot. The pilot is already installed in the cockpit. He is removable, but it appears to be Hibiki instead of Nex, so somebody goofed, grabbed the wrong flight suit, painted it that way, and now we appear to have the wrong pilot figure. There is obviously opening and closing canopy glass. The canopy glass on this toy does appear to be a little bit more pale than it was on the Sylvie release. The Sylvie release has an anatomically correct pilot figure in the proper flight suit, so higher marks there. This toy seems to go out of its way to make a really bad first impression. It comes with giant wings on the toy. It comes with tiny little hands. And usually the chest is just kind of flapping around when you first pull it out in Batroid mode. So then if you consult the instructions and say, okay, what should I do about this flapping around chest? It tells you to actually go grab this separate piece, which again, a bad first impression. People are gonna be like, that kind of sucks. Now I'd like to point out that you don't really need this separate piece. There is a little notch here that goes into a little metal bar here. And while we're looking at it, that is all metal throughout. So it's got this nice skeleton of metal within. And so yeah, that'll peg in. You just have to apply a little pressure and you're fine. Or you can go ahead, as the instructions tell you to do, bring the legs out and then fish this piece within. Kind of right on top, but behind. There it goes. And then you bring the legs back in and that locks that piece into position. And then we look underneath the nose here and we're gonna pop this piece out. And that will then expose 2 peg holes for the 2 pegs that are right there. So now we can bring this all over and I'm gonna flip it around so I can see that peg hole lining up, apply pressure, and now that chest is locked in more securely. Also, there's a little hole at the bottom of this if you have a Tamashii Stage Act display stand that you can use. So there you go. Now that is all locked together. And again, still a pretty poor first impression. So what you'd probably do next is pop off the hands, which are just a little ball joint, as you've seen probably already here. Put on your bigger hands and things are starting to look better. Then we'd flip the toy around and we're gonna get rid of these gigantic wings. So what you wanna do is bring the wing all the way out like so. And then you're gonna go ahead and use a toothpick or something to keep that button down as you pull away with the wing. And God, that is just an awful system. So again, first impression on this toy, really bad. So let's go ahead and pop that out too. And now we can go ahead and bring these little wing pieces inside, tuck them in, get the optional wings. You want to have that little UN Spacey logo pointing out, and you can just bring these up and they will pinch right into place. And so now you're going to have something that will look more like this, which is a solid toy with good looking fists. I don't have the optional piece here because I really don't think you need that. And you got the smaller wings. Everything looks good. Everything handles good. And now you're doing much better. You're ready to enjoy the toy. You've got a ball jointed head. Then the neck that also goes up and down. And the head itself can look up and down. So that's all good. You have the ability to bring the head lasers out and they move around on you. So that's all good there. Shoulder joint is good. And it rocks out away from the body. So that gives you a little more optionality. And going away from the body, you can also come up to the shoulder and come out like so. There is a pretty funky shoulder twist, or I should say forearm twist, or elbow twist. It's really difficult to get that joint there to move. So that is something that's a little tricky. But when everything's in place, you get a nice range of movement on the elbow. So that's good. So you get a little pivot here and a pivot here. All good there. The forearm itself also has a separate twist point. So you can bring this around, do whatever you want with it. That's all good. Obviously the hands are a ball joint, so you can do a lot with them. The hips allow you to splay outward quite a bit. And if you watch what you're doing with the intakes, you can get even further. And since they do have that extension gimmick for transformation, you can actually bring them out and get a further extension of the hip. Then moving down, you do have the Garwalk joint to come forward with, and that actually allows you to bring this up, which is something you don't get on the Evolution toy, which then gives you knee mobility, but it will pop off if you go too far with it. I get that more on my Sylvie toy than my next. But so you do have knee articulation. There is a twist within the knee, but you're really going to use that more for gear walk because you would use the twist at the top for Batroid mode more often. The feet do have an extension gimmick that'll let you get a little bit more back and forth with them, but they don't have much of a left and right to them. So that's going to be an inhibitor there. Overall, you will be able to get lots of fun poses with this toy, even without the feet doing crazy things, and even with the knees being pretty awkward. You will get your forearms splitting apart on you frequently. That's a little frustrating. You will get this chest gap going on, and that's a little frustrating. So it starts off with a really bad first impression. It definitely improves as you handle the toy, but there are still areas that you'll wish were better. Installing the Sap Pack is a lot less intuitive than the fast packs on a VF1 toy. To begin, on the arm armor here, we need to pop this port off so we have a latching point. And what you do is you just hold the interior part of the forearm and then push out on the fist, and that splits the forearm wide open and reveals that little circle on the interior. Then you're going to grab a toothpick and you're just going to poke it right on through, and it's going to remove this piece of plastic. Obviously that is a bummer. That's a little piece of plastic that seems like it would be easily lost. Then you are going to grab your forearm armor. We can close up the forearm. There is the port we have created. Here is the forearm armor. It has these cool little missile ports that extend away from the armor and then open up like so. So that's cool. And they close back into place pretty effectively. So that's good too. And then there's that peg that goes into that slot that we've created. And since it wraps around the forearm, it's going to stay in there pretty firmly in position. Installation of the leg armor is not terribly dissimilar. We have this little cover here and we need to just grab a fingernail and poke it off. And again, we end up with a little tiny piece of plastic that we want to do our best not to lose. Here is the leg armor itself. It has ports that open up as well, just like the arm armor did. They go out and they extend open. The bottom one needs a separate piece. So it's got, again, a peg. We're just going to put a toothpick in and poke it right on out. And again, not lose that piece. Then we can install this part here to simulate having all of the different doors open, which is pretty cool. We can then put this peg into that slot there. And then we can close these up if we want. Listen to the nice click. So you know that that is firmly in place. It's not going to open just when you're gently handling the toy. And we can plug this back in. And here is the leg armor installed. Now we're ready to install the Sap Pack. And so we're going to grab our backpack. Mine's a little disheveled at the moment. You're going to go ahead and fold these things back in Batroid mode. You can kind of do whatever you want. I've also got this piece locked. It can be extended. If you're going to extend it, watch your thumb and don't knock that gray piece out of alignment. But that's the extended look. So if yours is like that, go ahead and lock it into position. And what I found, it's actually easier to install the Valk into the armor rather than the armor on the Valk. So just go ahead and bring it. There's a peg here. There are latches or pegs on either side, which are going to kind of wrap around everything. So just bring it, line it all up, and then nestle it back into position, and it'll just lock right on like so. And there you go. Now you've got your Sap Pack installed. So why does the Sap Pack have a lock? That is for the railgun gimmick. So we can take the toy, flip it over, pop open the top lock that you saw me close before. And in doing so, you want to be very careful about a couple different things. One, your head lasers. You want to get those tucked down and out of position. And then two, you want to not do what I've done, and that is make this piece here askew. So hopefully I can just plug that right back into position. There it goes. So that is now free. It's going to come up and over. Let's bring this piece down so you can see what's happening. Going to come up and over the head, and then you're going to bring the visor down. And again, you want these head lasers out of the way. Now you're not going to have lights in your face. You're not going to have a camera in your face. So this is a lot more intuitive in person than it is on film right now. But get that down, get this visor back out, bring it down in front of the head, and there you go. Now you are firing the railgun, and if it's askew, that means your backpack is coming off because of the handling you just did, but it should be straight ahead, should look something like that, and it does make for a fun display item. If you are in the market for a VF-2SS toy, you can choose from either Bandai's High Metal R or the Evolution Toy 160 scale VF-2SS. Obviously, the Evolution Toy is much larger, about 24 centimeters tall to the nearly 16.5 for the High Metal R. The Evolution Toy does do some things that the High Metal R does not do. The Evolution Toy has a nice covering of the cockpit that's nice and firm. The Bandai High Metal R leaves that gap there, and that gap can be more exposed depending on how you pose the toy. The Evolution Toy also has a nice level area up here at the chest. That all comes together really nicely. Whereas on the Bandai High Metal R, if you look from above, it's this really weird gappy section of undulating pieces, so not nearly as clean there. The Evolution Toy also has appropriate sized wings, and these wings work in every single mode, whereas the Evolution Toy really relies on that separate piece you would use. Otherwise, you have these incredibly long wings that are really funky. So those are the pluses for the Evolution Toy. Now, the minuses for the Evolution Toy include, you can see I have an arm that's about to fall off, really bad QC. You have things like these big tabs on top of the already big tabs on the chest. You can see with the High Metal R, you can kind of do things with the head and it doesn't look like it's looking directly into the chest. With the Evolution Toy, frequently it looks like it's just looking at its own chest. So that is an awkward bit that you have to deal with. The transformation, handling the toy, all of those things are definitely much better with the Bandai High Metal R. Evolution Toy was a first effort. I give them credit for that, but the pegs, the way everything comes together is very sloppy. I would say Batroid mode is its best mode, and it makes a half-decent display piece, particularly if you cut off these big tabs on the top. You can't angle the guns outward, and overall, it's not a satisfying experience. You can actually have fun with the High Metal R toy. Now, the other thing that we can show you here are the Sap Pack. So here is an Evolution Toy Next version. Here is the Bandai version. Now, Evolution Toy does not have the ability to sweep these pieces back. And somebody once told me, like, yeah, they do. They don't. They're just on a big peg, and if you sweep them back, you're actually either breaking the piece or you're just popping the glue free and there's enough slop there. It's just a peg that holds that out. Now, these end pieces do swivel, so that's good. And if we turn this toy around, you do get the antenna on this piece, and this part here does move back and forth without needing to be popped off and popped back on like it does with the Bandai toy. Also, you have these gun ports on the Evolution Toy. They can actually open. So it's not a separate piece that you need to go grab, and that's also true of these ones on the end. So those are all positives. You can see that's about to fall off. But as you can see, as that does fall off, handling this, again, not satisfactory. You get weird loose pieces. You get the same fold-over gun gimmick, which is cool, but it just feels sloppy. And in order to install the Sap Pack, you actually have to remove the vertical stabilizers, which is beyond funky. Now, another positive thing though, inside the arm armor, see if I can open this up, you can actually stow the gun. It's not just a piece that makes it look like you're stowing the gun. So positive there. You also get missile ports that open up. Again, pretty sloppy in their execution when compared to the smaller Bandai High Metal R toy, which also, and the big credit to the Sap Pack on the High Metal R toy is this hinge here and the fact it rotates at that hinge, because that lets you get some really fun and cool looking poses. Everything fits on pretty tight with the Bandai High Metal R toy, with the exception of that backpack piece kind of getting skewed occasionally. Everything fits also very tight with the Evolution toy. It just doesn't feel as good in the hands. So that is the issue there. Overall, again, the High Metal R toy, smaller package, not ideal in that you have to pop pieces off to pop things on, but at least it's not taking entire vertical stabilizers off. So I would definitely, again, prefer Bandai's High Metal R. Here we have the Sap on in gear walk mode, and you can complete transformation from Batroid mode to gear walk mode without removing any of the Sap parts, which is pretty cool. Once you get here, you can go ahead and independently rotate these pieces. I don't think I've shown you that yet. You can also rotate this piece on top, which also, I mentioned the Evolution toys. This piece can go forward or back. On the Bandai High Metal R, you have two separate mounting areas. So you can mount it so it's further back or mount it so it's a little further forward. I believe the reasoning for that is so that in Batroid mode, it can be a little further back so this whole railgun can flip over the top without it impeding that at all. Might also just be something that's supposed to dynamically move around, but the High Metal R, you have to pop it off and pop it back on again. Evolution toys, some bonus points there for integrating that functionality. The Forearm Armor also has the ability to pop the front door off. Now I showed you Evolution toy, you can actually fit the gun inside. On the High Metal R, we get this piece here, which looks like a gun sliding out, which we can plug on there. You can see it looks like the door is open, the gun is sliding out, and we can bring the other hand over to make it look like he's grabbing that gun. So that's as close as you can get with the High Metal R. At this scale, maybe it's good enough for you, maybe it's not. Here we are in gear walk mode, sans Sap part, and you are going to remove the front of the toe and replace it with the forked toe as part of your gear walk transformation. So that's not perfect transformation. If you were really a stickler about perfect transformation, you could, of course, leave that solid toe on. It won't be a perfect emulation of the liner, but it won't affect how the toy functions. The gear walk mode joints in the back allow for a lot of articulation. You can have a good amount of fun getting this toy in some pretty dynamic poses. It's going to make a good display piece, but it also will make things a little frustrating if you want to get just kind of a boring look going on, because you do have pieces that pop off when they hit the wrong thing. Let's push that back on. You do have a pivot here, a pivot here, a twist below that pivot, an extension here, and an extension at the foot. You also have a big kneecap that makes things a little awkward when everything starts coming together. So those multiple points of articulation plus this pivot here and the ball joint that connects to the hip ends up making it so the legs can get totally squirrely in a whole bunch of different directions. And while that works for dynamic posing, if you're going for something more static or stoic, it can be a little awkward. Speaking of awkward, the vertical stabilizers in the back, also a little bit awkward. But otherwise, a lot of fun to handle the toy, so that's all good. One thing it doesn't do, that the Evolution toy does, is angle those wings upward. So there is some line art out there that shows the wings upward slanting. You can't do that with the Bandai High Metal R. It would have been easy for them to just include wings that did that. They chose not to. You can see the wings don't really interfere with the shoulders like they do on the Evolution toy. So Bandai didn't really need to do it. The Evolution toy also has the intakes tucked way in underneath. Bandai went with an external look. I prefer Bandai's approach for sure. And obviously I prefer Bandai's toy not falling apart on me. So the toy also comes with a display stand adapter, not a display stand, just the adapter. And this can work with your Tamashii stage act display stands. And what you're going to do here is just bring that little support brace inside back, and then you're going to, there's a little tooth, it's probably pretty hard to see on a clear plastic piece. You want to fish that around a little indent at the front of this gray piece, and then bring it back. It'll click into place, and then it comes forward, and now you are free to just grab any Tamashii display stand you might have and peg that in like so. So it's a shame that the toy doesn't come with a display stand, but that's how that adapter works. Fighter mode may be a love it or hate it mode. I actually think it's pretty cool looking, although I know there's lots of people out there that are not big fans of the design in fighter mode. But transformation to fighter mode from Garwalk is pretty interesting, and it is perfect with the exception of those feet that pop off, and now we have the closed toe back on. Everything comes together really nice and tight. It is playable in this mode, so that's really cool. If you are used to high metal R toys, then you would already expect that there are not integrated landing gear. So what you're gonna need to do is pop off this front piece, just like we did in Batroid mode, to get access to that those two little slots. Obviously not the easiest thing to do. And then you get this really funky front landing gear that we're gonna plug in here. Yeah, I don't know why anyone would ever design a landing gear to look like that, but so it is. The back landing gear, you have to open up the compartment by pushing down on the front and then swinging that open. And once you do, these pieces behind it should come out pretty easily. They're a little more snug, I feel like, on my next toy, but here you can see even on this toy, it isn't just falling right out, which is a good thing. There it goes, come on. All right, so those are out. You wanna have your wheel on the outside. Now, these aren't rubber wheels that spin or anything. The detail work is fair enough. It's just white. You can see I've got a little white paint on mine. So minor paint flaw there. Obviously it's gonna be resting on that, so it's not really gonna matter. So there you are, landing gear down, and there is clearance for everything except the front of the front landing gear. Again, just terrible design. We do have a gun, and it's always been kind of a question where the gun gets stowed in fighter mode. Bandai put a slot in the backpack that allows you to stow that gun in fighter mode, and it's a little off center, so it wouldn't just shoot the fin off, so that's all good. And here we go, I got that vertical stabilizer lined up. And what's really neat about what Bandai accomplished here is how far off to the side those legs get. Now, if we compare that to something like the Evolution toy VF-2SS, the legs on this toy doesn't get as flat as the Bandai High Metal R. And the truth is, as you get further away from Batroid mode, the Evolution toy gets worse and worse. So in fighter mode, it's just a disaster. So if you are a huge fan of fighter mode and you're debating between these toys, I don't think there's much of a question. You really need to just go with the Bandai High Metal R, because the Evolution toy, despite its larger size, it's like 28 centimeters. The Bandai High Metal R is like 19.5. It does have integrated landing gear. I could say that as a positive thing for the Evolution toy. But in every other respect, the High Metal R in fighter mode trumps it. If you want to use your VF-2SS with a display stand, like this Tamashii Stage Act display stand, in fighter mode, you have this connection piece, which is a little different in that it has to go underneath this piece here. So we can just pop this off, and then you kind of just fish it in like so. And then you get back to just behind the head, and you press down at that point, and everything will kind of find a home, and it should be pretty snug in there. But then you need to pull this piece forward again and get it pegged back in. So it's a little tricky. It's a little easier to accomplish actually without the sap parts, or with the sap parts, I should say, because then you don't have this piece down at the bottom. It's instead on top of the toy like it was in Batroid mode. So let's get that head back. And there we go. So now we've got the display stand adapter on. If you've got a next toy, you can't use the heavy gun as an attachment to the bottom. There's no little peg for it. Instead, you would use your regular gun, your medium gun, and just peg this on. And then we would just peg it onto our display stand. And again, this will add some fun value, but it's a shame no display stands included. Now I know a lot of you really like the 160 scale, so you still might be considering the Evolution toy despite some of the negative things I've said in comparison to the High Metal R. The High Metal R doesn't have anything in the sap that prevents you from transforming the toy, nor does it disable any of the things that peg the toy together in any particular mode. That's unlike the Evolution toy, which has forearm armors that nerf the pegs that attach to the legs. And you can see there's not really enough clearance for the landing gear and the forearm armors anyway. So it's kind of a mess in fighter mode with the Sap Pack or without. And I showed you earlier that this piece slides around, which is kind of cool for the Evolution toy. But in doing that, I have broken that piece, and furthermore, I don't even see how I can get in there to fix that piece. So again, I know 160 scale has a lot of draw to people, and the High Metal R is more like 1/100 scale. But if you can stomach it, I think you have a clear, obvious, better choice. These toys come with Squires. This is a Squire. There's not a whole lot to it. It has a hole in the back, but the toys don't come with display stands. So if you're going to buy one of these, I highly recommend you purchase a Tamashii Stage Act Trident Plus display stand, as you see here. You can just peg your Squires onto the end. I've got a couple extra arms from other display stands, and it can make a very good looking display piece. So I think that adds a lot of value to your purchase. Now the toy does come with optional open gun ports, so I can just pull this off and then slot in this new open gun port. Now, obviously that's not an ideal situation because you end up with these little pieces all over the place, but it's cool that you have the option to do it. If it's really important to you that that be integrated, the Evolution Toys SAP does have those integrated. Now I am using the regular display stand, the fighter display stand adapter here. I just don't have the panel through the backpack panel going through the display stand adapter, and everything works out fine. And obviously we could pivot these guns around, we could pivot the sap around. Now I'm still a little frustrated with how easily my sap pops off in the back. But yeah, you can do some really weird things with these things and just have a lot of fun with it. So that does add fun factor, as does the display stand. So all good things there. At the end of the day, it's not my favorite High Metal R release. And if you're not a VF-2SS fan or a Macross 2 fan, it might not be entirely up your alley. It's got some issues that are going to frustrate you. There's a lot of different moving parts that have to come together, and getting everything symmetrical can be pretty tough to do. Overall, I like it. I'm happy it's in my collection. But if you're someone who appreciates a simpler toy, like the very simple VF1 transformation, how everything locks together nice and tight there, then you might have issues with this toy feeling a little sloppy to you. Check out my full review on anymoon.com, subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.